The day of the Empress's coronation was also the day I died. Alexander Wang forced his way into the palace with a sword. With what little dignity I had left, I hanged myself. As I slipped away, I saw that killing god, the one who hated me to the bone. He dropped to his knees and wept tears of blood. "Evie, please come back." Then I opened my eyes again. I was back in my maiden room, waiting to be married. He stood behind the screen, eyes like ink, voice raw and hoarse. "Evelyn Zheng, in this life, even if you become my mother in name, you'll still die in my arms." I became Empress. After years of struggle, one day I finally stood above Alexander Wang. I became his legitimate mother, by law and by title. I lounged on the phoenix throne, one leg crossed over the other, and looked down at him. "Alexander Wang, do you accept it?" He kept his head bowed as if he wanted to grind me into dust. He spat out 2 words, "No." We'd grown up together, childhood sweethearts, no secrets between us. When did things turn into this? Maybe it was the night before I entered the palace, when he got drunk and barged into my courtyard, trying to take me away, and I slapped him. Maybe it was when I watched coldly as the woman he loved was ordered to marry into Reborn, and I did nothing to help. Either way, he came to hate me. The next day, Alexander Wang led troops and camped outside the Palace of Earthly Tranquility. He rebelled. The shouts and clashes outside pierced the windows and flooded my ears. I'd lost my father, lost my husband, and I'd also offended Alexander Wang. When the massive army broke down the doors, I rose onto my toes and slipped my head into the white silk noose that had been hanging there for who knew how long. "Evelyn Zheng, you want to die?" Alexander Wang's face was smeared with blood. He looked like an Ashura crawling out of hell. He drew his sword and strode toward me across a sea of corpses. He never forgot a grudge. When he killed an enemy, he did it slice by slice. I refused to be the next. I kicked the stool away. The knot cinched tight around my throat. Suffocation rushed in. Like a falling butterfly, I sank into darkness. "Hey, wake up! It's your turn!" In the dark, someone nudged me. Thud. My body hit something hard. A faint peony scent, mixed with damp earth, slipped into my nose. Eyes still closed, I hummed and rubbed at it. At this time of year, only the peonies in the imperial garden were in full bloom. Then the sounds around me poured in, sharpening, like a curtain slowly rising. Dazed, I opened my eyes. A huge sun hung high overhead, blindingly bright. A woman bent over me, blocking the light. Her face was severe. Falling asleep during the selection? That takes talent. I studied her features. Then my eyes widened and my voice came out hoarse. "Grace, I'm dead." She slapped me. "Evelyn Zheng, with the Emperor and the Empress Dowager watching, don't start spouting nonsense." The sting snapped me awake. I scrambled to my feet. The moment I saw what was in front of me, I froze. A breeze lifted my hair. A crabapple blossom tucked in it brushed my earlobe. Women in bright dresses, a crowd murmuring. A young emperor plucked grape from a plate and popped it into his mouth. The Empress Dowager, long dead in my memory, lit her tobacco from a eunuch's flame and slowly blew out a smoke ring. It felt unreal, and yet painfully real. I stared, forcing out 2 words. Me? Had I been reborn? I'd come back to the worst possible year. That year, my father, the powerful chancellor, was accused of bribery and corruption and demoted to the northern frontier. I endured it by sheer will and stood out in the selection, winning the emperor's favor and entering the palace as a low-ranking consort. Later, I clawed my way upward and took the phoenix seat. The very next day, Prince Yu, Alexander Wang, forced me to die on a beam in the Palace of Earthly Tranquility. Fate had handed me a chance to change everything, yet the timing made the ending feel inevitable. If I'd been reborn 18 years earlier, back when I first met Alexander Wang, I could have swallowed the words, "ugly freak," instead of saying them. Then he wouldn't have hated me for more than a decade. I could have exposed my father the first time he took silver, cut off the path to ruin, and not ended up alone. I could have stopped myself that night. Alexander Wang tried to take me away, so I wouldn't have stupidly said I'd fallen for his father, the emperor. But I'd been reborn on the cursed 8th day of the 4th month, the day of the selection. After I acted sweet in front of the emperor, I fainted from hunger. There wasn't much I could change. The only thing I could do was change Grace's fate. 6 months later, she would be sent to Ruin for a political marriage. I had to prevent that, so Alexander Wang wouldn't kill me in a rage to vent his grief. While I cursed my luck in silence, Grace jabbed an elbow into my ribs. Prince Yu has his eye on you. Don't daydream. There was excitement in her voice, like I was some unwanted old maid being miraculously rescued. I took a deep breath and looked up. Prince Yu? Which Prince Yu? My mind was a mess. I didn't react until I met the gaze of a man who looked anything but friendly. My whole body jolted. The blood-smeared face from my last life overlapped with the man before me. Under my terrified stare, he gave a cold smile. Evelyn Zheng, why are you staring at me? Got a problem? Alexander Wang, close my eyes. It was him. Open them. Still him. In the sunlight, he wore a pale, brocade robe. His face was flawless, his presence bright and arrogant. With one foot propped on a low table, he looked like a reckless youth who feared nothing. He had his eye on me? Impossible. The one he liked was Grace. When I caught Grace's look, I understood. She'd begged Alexander Wang. In my last life, I'd been too proud. When disaster struck my family, I'd rather enter the palace as a concubine than accept Grace's pity and stay in Prince Yu's residence as a side concubine. It fit that saying perfectly. If I had to be someone's concubine, why not the emperor's? This time, I didn't want to enter the palace. But I also couldn't stay at Alexander Wang's side. I was about to refuse when Alexander Wang laughed. Evelyn Zheng, that scented sachet you gave me the other day? I didn't like the pattern. Next time, make a different one. The moment he said it, the Empress Dowager's face turned green. So did mine. Private exchanges like that meant there was no such thing as innocence anymore. In this world, the only one bold enough to steal women from others was Alexander Wang. The Empress Dowager flung down her pipe and slammed the table. Guards! Throw them out! Something was off. Along the long palace road, the culprit rode his swift horse ahead, unhurried as if out for a stroll. I dragged Grace behind him. My eyes practically bored holes into his back. What was Alexander Wang thinking, saying something like that? Third cousin isn't a monster, Grace whispered. Try to rein in your temper. I'll still be counting on you later. I shot her a look and said flatly, if you like him so much, tell your father. Have him send someone to propose. Grace's father was a powerful prince of a different surname. With her status, she was more than worthy. Grace froze, cheeks flushing. What nonsense are you talking about? I was about to press the point, talk her into it, when she suddenly stopped and said she wanted to visit the Empress. I thought, her family wasn't close to the Empress at all. Maybe the Prince of Jing'an had heard rumors and asked the Empress to help find Grace a husband in the palace. Honestly, that would be for the best. Anyone was better than being married off to Ruren. Relief loosened something in my chest, but I didn't dare show it. I was afraid Alexander Wang would think I'd pushed his beloved toward another match and chop me down in anger. I hadn't had a drop of water all day. My body was weak. After walking for a while, it felt like the horse ahead had 8 legs. My vision swayed. I toppled backwards, stiff as a board. Thud. A servant cried out, Prince, Miss Zheng has collapsed. I only heard Alexander Wang's loud, lazy voice. I'm not blind. I can see. Bastard, I cursed him silently, but I kept my eyes shut and stubbornly refused to get up. We were already enemies. What did one more grudge matter? Besides, you'd just stolen me from your father. You can't ignore me on the way back to the residence, can you? Who knew Alexander Wang would dig in his heels? The sun was vicious, baking my face until it burned. He stayed on horseback in the shade of a tree, voice icy. Evelyn Zheng, if you're not afraid your face will blister, keep lying there. So the palace road stayed silent, with one person sprawled across it. Under a distant tree, someone sat cross-legged, holding a horse's reins. Now and then, palace servants passed by, heads lowered, hurrying away. We held our standoff until the sun tilted west. When the last light drained from the sky, Alexander Wang shoved away a servant's palm fan, stood and sighed lazily. Time to flip the old sow. Then he walked off at his leisure. Thanks to Alexander Wang, I was carried into Prince Yu's residence. My first night wasn't bad. They tossed me into a room, shut the door, and left me there. After a full day of torment, I fell asleep the moment my head hit the pillow. Early the next morning, bang! I jerked upright. The war had begun. Bright daylight poured in. The window was wide open, and cold wind flooded the room. Heart hammering, I watched a black-crested rooster flap through the window. Someone had thrown it inside. Feathers exploded everywhere. I screamed and shrank back against the bed. That bastard Alexander Wang had tossed in his beloved chicken. His prized rooster was called General Might. With Alexander Wang backing it, it had pecked me plenty in my last life. Before I died, my greatest regret was not killing it and turning it into soup. Alexander Wang stood at the window, arms crossed. Evelyn Zheng, what time is it? Still sleeping? Don't you know you're supposed to help your master wash up and get dressed? Cluck, cluck. General Might stretched its neck and stared at me with its black eyes, as arrogant as its owner. In the room, the rooster and I fell into a bizarre standoff. I curled under the quilt, wrapping it around my neck, trembling. In my last life, I once traveled incognito with the Emperor and got targeted by a flock of geese. They chased me through 3 streets. I was bruised black and blue before anyone saved me. From then on, anything with a sharp beak terrified me. My face went white. I couldn't breathe. My vision darkened and I lost consciousness. Right before I fainted, I heard Alexander Wang curse under his breath. Damn it, you're scared of a chicken? When my mind finally cleared, I opened my eyes slowly to Alexander Wang's dark face. A maid beside him said carefully, Prince, easy. You're pinching until it bleeds. I sucked in a sharp breath and slapped his hand away. It hurts. I rushed to the mirror. Blood streamed from my nose. Alexander Wang snapped, impatient. Every day it's this hurts, that hurts. Say one more word and I'll sew your mouth shut. Those crude words didn't suit his status at all. Still, they did nothing to diminish his outrageously good looks. I glared at him, resentful. Even after he left, the bleeding wouldn't stop. After that mess, I had no mood to dress up. Hair, a tangled wreck, I sat at the vanity with a handkerchief pressed to my upper lip, staring into nothing. A gentleman doesn't leave revenge unpaid. Chloe, I heard the residents got a new cook today. Chloe was the maid sent from the palace to serve me. Whether she was just a maid was something everyone understood. These days, any prince's residence had the emperor's eyes inside it. Chloe answered obediently. They say the cook has an impressive background. The late emperor once granted him a gold-lettered signboard. The emperor dotes on the prince, so he sent him here to work. I gave a soft laugh. Whether he was really a cook was something everyone understood, too. Tell the kitchen I want roast chicken. In an excellent mood, I pinned a bright red flower into my hair. It made my face look even prettier. Chloe looked troubled. Mistress, you're asking so suddenly. Where are we supposed to find a chicken? I smiled. Isn't there one in the back courtyard? When Alexander Wang returned around noon, General Might sat on the table. Hands clasped behind his back, he looked pleased. Oh, chicken today? I ladled a bowl of soup and set it in front of him, smiling sweetly. Stewed with asparagus from the Southern Tribute for 2 hours. Try it. Alexander Wang was delighted. He blew on the bowl, drank it down, and praised it. Not bad. He picked at the meat. A chicken claw. Black, a chicken head, black. His hand stopped. Where did this chicken come from? I gave him an innocent, spotless smile. Alexander Wang shot to his feet and stormed out. A moment later, his roar shook the courtyard. Who stewed my General Might? The new cook was sent back to the palace for stewing Prince Yu's fighting rooster. That night, in the study, Alexander Wang stared at me, face like thunder. I cried hard, trembling and tearful. Prince, please see clearly. I only wanted chicken soup. Who knew the cook would stew that chicken? Don't swallow your anger. Beat me to death if you must. Alexander Wang narrowed his eyes at me. Evelyn Zheng, as if I don't know you. Know what about me? We've only met once in this life. I even called you an ugly freak. Don't act like we're old friends. I avoided his gaze and cried even harder, cheeks flushed, nearly out of breath. I didn't mean it. His expression shifted, suspicion to hesitation. Then he frowned deeply and let out a heavy sigh. Stop crying. I didn't even scold you. I came around the desk, pitiful as could be. I hooked one of his fingers with mine and pouted. You scared me. Alexander Wang snorted, then pinched my cheek carelessly. Skittish as a sparrow. You did me a favor. Consider it making up for your fault. My heart jumped. So he wasn't an idiot. Anything the emperor gave was valuable. But the people the emperor gave, especially those placed in the kitchen, were the ones you had to watch most closely. The moment your food passed through someone else's hands, your life was in their hands. I'd helped him pull out a spy. I was a major contributor. Just then, someone outside reported, Prince, Lady Grace is here. Alexander Wang shoved me away and stood. Where is she? At the usual place. He exhaled hard, straightened his clothes, and said to me, Go back first. I knew he was going to see his sweetheart. I hummed and stepped aside. Alexander Wang vanished like a gust of wind. On the way back, the servants looked at me with pity, as if to say, that woman used Lady Grace to get into the residence, and in the end, she'll still be left out in the cold. Pathetic. I didn't explain. I shut my door and slept like a rock. The next day, the emperor bestowed a beauty on the residence. Before this, there had only been me, a lowly concubine. Now another appeared out of nowhere, and the residence instantly came alive. Servants who hadn't picked sides in ages started running next door to the servants at Prince Yong's residence, asking how to choose between two women and betting on which one was most likely to become princess consort. The neighbor shook his head. No idea. Our princess consort changes once a year. The beauty's surname was Zhao. Her given name was Fiona. Relying on her higher rank, she tried to put me in my place the very first day. Unfortunately for her, Grace happened to be visiting me. Fiona had barely finished scolding me when Grace lifted her chin. And what do you think you are? Grace hadn't entered the residence, yet she already carried herself like the true mistress. Normally, even servants didn't dare raise their voices around her, afraid of startling her. But Fiona Zhao wasn't timid. She raised her own chin. Lady Grace, this is Prince Yu's residence's private matter. Even your father doesn't get to interfere. Grace had always been arrogant. How could she tolerate a concubine talking back? She sneered on the spot. Believe it or not, I'll go into the palace right now and ask for an edict to marry into Prince Yu's residence as his princess consort. When that happens, not only will I scold you, I could shove your head into a chamber pot, and no one would dare say a word. Fiona Zhao went pale. She pointed at Grace for a long moment, unable to speak. In the end, it was her maid who half dragged, half pulled her away. Grace inspected her nails and laughed. She has the emperor backing her, so do I. What's there to fear? I didn't take it seriously, but Chloe did. She asked anxiously, Mistress, is Lady Grace really planning to marry the prince? It wouldn't be bad, I said. Sooner or later she would marry. That night, Alexander Wang came. He kicked off his boots and sat cross-legged on the couch, beckoning me over. Come, tell me how she bullied you. I hadn't been wronged, but I was more than happy to pour oil on the fire. She called me a little vixen. Lately, Alexander Wang had taken to pinching my cheeks. She's not wrong. You are a little vixen. I hesitated, then leaned against his shoulder, half willing, and said sweetly, You're awful. Maybe I put too much weight on him. He coughed. I clung to his arm, cloying and shameless. Prince Yu, over and over until even I got goosebumps. But Alexander Wang grinned, pleased with himself. I'll have her sent away tonight. Even if he sent her away, it wouldn't be for me. It would be for Grace. If Grace hadn't happened to be in the residence and taken offense, Fiona Zhao could have stepped on my face all day, and Alexander Wang still wouldn't have asked a single question. I listened as if it were a joke. When it grew late, I opened the door and found Fiona Zhao standing under a tree, eyes full of spite. You little slut! You dare tattle on me? I was so sleepy my eyelids barely lifted. I just wanted her to be sensible and put me out of my misery. So I said, Sister, the prince likes a sweet mouth. He doesn't like trouble stirred up in the residence. Evelyn Zheng, you dare mock me. She grabbed a piece of wood and smashed it into my forehead. Chloe screamed and reached for my wound. Help! Mistress is bleeding. Suddenly, the main gate flew open. A large hand replaced Chloe's and pressed hard against my wound. A cold voice said, Where did everyone go? Take her and send her back to the palace. Before the beauty could shout again, she was slammed to the ground. Alexander Wang lifted the cloth from my forehead. Blood immediately ran down my face. His eyes went dark, killing intent rising. Stop wasting time. Skin her alive, chop her hands off. I knew he could do it. In my last life, Alexander Wang was brutal and lawless. He killed without blinking. The last time I'd seen him this savage was when someone mocked his mother in public. Fiona Zhao turned deathly pale. Prince, you said I could do as I pleased in the residence. You wouldn't interfere. Alexander Wang gave a cold laugh. I didn't tell you to do as you pleased to her. I gave you face and you refused it. Fine, then I'll strip you bare. The beauty shook like a leaf, stunned. I refuse. She only just entered too. Why? Why? Alexander Wang wrapped an arm around my waist and pulled me close. I've said more to her than the salt you've ever eaten. You think you can compare? Amid Fiona Zhao's screams, he dragged me back into the room and took out salve to treat my wound. Blood blurred my sight. Sitting on the small couch, I stared at Alexander Wang in a daze. Then I said, I won't tell Grace. You don't need to be nervous. Alexander Wang kept his head lowered. Why bring her up? I shut my mouth, knowing my place. I only thought, the next time Grace comes, I'd better swallow that stubborn temper. If she took it out on Alexander Wang, the one who suffered would still be me. Candlelight cut sharp lines of light and shadow along his profile. His long lashes cast a dark shade beneath his eyes. When he didn't speak, Alexander Wang was undeniably handsome. Too bad he had a mouth. Evelyn Zheng, aren't you capable? Couldn't you dodge? What good is being capable? I'm taking blows for your grace. If you don't give me some gold and jewelry, that's just unfair. I sniffled and leaned into his arms. Lord Wang, thank you for saving me. Alexander Wang studied me for a moment, then asked suddenly, Evelyn Zheng, what are you thinking? What was I thinking? Of course, I was thinking, get Grace married to you, then walk away once it's done. When I didn't answer, he turned my face toward him. Evelyn Zheng, I know you're plotting something, but hide it better, don't let me see it. I stopped dancing around it. Then marry Grace. Alexander Wang froze, eyes narrowing. You want me to marry who? Grace. He sprang up. Don't even think about it. You two are in love, it's perfect. To hell with in love. Alexander Wang kicked the stool over with a bang. Evelyn Zheng, did you eat so much you ate your brain too? Then he stormed out. The door slammed behind him. I froze, unable to fathom what kind of madness had gotten into Alexander Wang. It was late, and I'd been about to turn in early. Just after midnight, a servant knocked urgently at the door and window. Ma'am, you have to come take a look. The prince is outside, dead drunk, and he's gotten into a fight. My head thudded against the bed frame. I shot upright, cursed under my breath, pulled my cloak tighter, and ran out into the rain to find him. The streets were empty. Before long, I reached the tavern. A small lamp burned at the entrance. The innkeeper was squatting outside. The moment he saw me, he hurried over. Madam, the prince has been asking for you. Please come in. It's freezing out here. I rubbed my red, chilled nose, took the hand warmer he offered, and followed him into a private room. I'd expected flying plates and an all-out brawl. Instead, Alexander Wang was slumped beside a low table, propping up his head, eyes half closed. Not far away sat Minister Yang from the Imperial Observatory. Minister Yang was drunk off his feet, muttering endlessly. So what if he's of the Son of Heaven's blood? Without the teachings of the 4 books and 5 classics, he's no better than an uncivilized barbarian, not fit for polite society. Anyone could tell who that was aimed at. He was cursing Alexander Wang. On any normal day, Alexander Wang would have crushed Minister Yang's skull with his bare hands. Tonight, for some reason, he said nothing. He just leaned there in silence. The innkeeper, tactful as ever, quietly closed the door behind us. I glanced around, grabbed a vase, and kept listening as Minister Yang spewed more nonsense. Crude and ill-mannered, extravagant and wasteful, low-born, shameless, I, Yang, will prove the truth with my own body. I fear no power. Bang! I raised the vase and brought it down on Minister Yang's head. Prove this with your own body, my ass. If it weren't for people like him in my last life, Alexander Wang wouldn't have turned into that monster. Minister Yang's forehead ballooned into a huge lump. He shouted, just because his father is the emperor. I won't accept it. Bang! Another blow. Panting, I lifted the vase again with effort. Then keep it to yourself. One of his eyes was already bruising. Damn him. I stuffed a rag into his mouth, swept his hair aside, and only then did the fury twisting in my gut ease. When I turned back, Alexander Wang's gaze was cool and steady. He stared at me without blinking. My hand began to tremble. Clang! The vase slipped from my fingers. Porcelain shattered across the floor. Minister Yang, howling in pain, rolled around. The rag worked halfway out and he started retching. Over that awful noise, I forced a smile, scrambling to salvage my gentle, proper image. My lord, I finally found you. Alexander Wang let me throw myself against him. A faint scent of alcohol clung to him. The night dew was heavy, soaking into his clothes. He must have been by the window for a long time, so he'd been faking it. Was he testing me on purpose? If he pinned me for assaulting a court official, how was I supposed to talk my way out? All at once, Alexander Wang lifted his hand and clamped down hard on my back. Everything went quiet. In a hoarse voice, he asked, "Your Highness, why is your forehead red?" "Your Highness, not Evie." A chill shot straight to the crown of my head. My thoughts knotted into chaos. I stayed pressed against him, not daring to move. That impossible idea from before suddenly snapped into focus. If I could be reborn, why couldn't Alexander Wang? I dimly remembered countless times in my last life. Alexander Wang passed out drunk in a tavern, and I'd storm in with a broom, seize him by the collar, and drag him back. Back then, even more people looked down on him. I couldn't fight them. I would say nothing, haul him away, and lock him up. He held me like he meant to grind me into his bones. There was a trace of grievance in his voice. "Your Highness, why did it take you so long?" I patted his head, my voice going rough. When Alexander Wang was sober, he never spoke to me like this. Now he'd suddenly softened, and I didn't know what to do with it. He looked up. His eyes were hazy with drink, tangled with struggle and hatred, and something like unwillingness and regret. "Why don't you ever listen?" Still holding me, he let out a long sigh. "I didn't want you to die." My mouth fell open. The next instant, his cold lips crashed onto mine, faintly wine-sweet, forceful and possessive. His hands slid into my clothes, fumbling along the fine ties at my back. With one tug, they came loose. My chest was bared. I cried out, and he swallowed the sound, holding me as he rolled behind the screen. Panicked, I braced my hands against him and gasped, "Alexander Wang, you're drunk! There are people next door." His eyes were red. He pinned my wrists. "Yeah, I'm drunk. If I'm not drunk, how would you show up in my dreams? Evie, living off my father isn't so tasty. Can't you live off me instead?" As he spoke, he forced through the last of my resistance, his hands sliding lower. I sucked in a sharp breath and yelped. Heat surged to my cheeks. "Alexander Wang, are you out of your mind?" His eyes burned, like a rabid wolf cub. "Has my father touched you? Evelyn Zheng, how old are you? And you already know how to go after old men? I'm not old. Come after me." Tears spilled over. With all my strength, I slapped him hard. "Alexander Wang, wake up!" I'd entered the palace early, but I had never truly served the emperor. Maybe he thought I was too young. Maybe he couldn't bring himself to cross that line. I'd called him Uncle Emperor for so long it had become a habit. I never knew Alexander Wang carried feelings like this. Everything went still. Alexander Wang froze. His pupils widened slightly. Little by little, his eyes cleared. His hand loosened, and he stood there, dazed. I tore free and scrambled into the corner, hugging my knees to my chest. My clothes were in tatters. Tears kept pouring down. I sobbed under my breath. "You bastard!" Smack! Another slap. Alexander Wang slapped himself, harder than I had. His face went paper white. He closed his eyes and didn't speak for a long time. Outside the screen, I heard Minister Yang's wife cursing as she shoved the door open and charged in. Amid the racket, she dragged Minister Yang away. The door shut again. Silence returned. "Evie, I'm sorry." His voice was very soft, as if anything louder might frighten me. Across both lives, it was the first time Alexander Wang had ever apologized to me. My face was hot and wet. I wiped it and said through tears, "What's sorry good for? What you did tonight. Does one's sorry erase it?" It wasn't even that serious. He'd only touched me, kissed me, held me, yet he looked unbearably guilty. Alexander Wang reached out slowly as if afraid I'd flinch. When he saw I didn't resist, he took my hand and pressed it to his cheek. Hoarsely, he said, "Evie, slap me here. Whenever you feel better, we'll stop." I shoved him hard, but he didn't budge. "My hand will hurt." He held my hand tight, like he was afraid I'd bolt. "Then I'll do it myself. You count, all right?" I knew he really would. In my last life, he'd been stubborn to the bone. You could beat him until his skin split, and he still wouldn't say a word. Right now, he truly looked ready to punish himself. "I'm tired. I don't want to look at you." I turned my head away. He stiffened, then said dully, "I'll take you back. My clothes are torn because of you. How am I supposed to go?" He looked even more ashamed. I thought I was dreaming. I thought it wasn't real." "So if it wasn't real, you could do whatever you wanted to me?" Nasal with tears, I gave him a light kick. I'm your highness, show some respect. Don't say those two words. His voice turned cold like he wanted to lash out but didn't dare. In the end, he only looked away, resentful. Evie, if you don't like me, then don't. Stop stabbing me where it hurts. It was normal if he didn't acknowledge me. Me and him, if you put aside hatred and gain, we could have been called childhood sweethearts. Back then, Alexander Wang loved to fool around. I couldn't stand it, so I chased him every day with a broom and beat him. The emperor used to laugh with my father and say, "So young, and she already knows how to tame a husband. In the future, we'll have to let Evie keep an eye on him." And now it was somehow my fault. He'd held it in for so long, he'd driven me to hang myself. Of course, I wasn't letting him off that easily. I hooked his arm lightly with my toe. When his ears started to redden, I whispered, "I'm not wearing anything. I'm cold." His neck flushed too, but he didn't move. He didn't even look at me. Furious, I stood. "Fine, I'll go back myself. Let them look if they want. It's not like there's much to see." "Evelyn Zheng, you dare!" Alexander Wang's voice snapped from behind me, teeth clenched. I turned around. He was already striding over. He yanked off his robe and threw it over me, covering my head. Hum. After that day, Alexander Wang didn't show his face to me for 3 full days. Over those days, Grace came often. Between the lines, she kept trying to ask about Ruin. My heart tightened. "Did you hear something?" Grace looked listless. "Uncle Emperor said they might send someone for a political marriage." Bitterness rose in my chest. I gripped Grace's hand. "Grace, marry someone." When Grace left, her eyes were red like a rabbit's. She asked, "Even if it's into the royal family, it doesn't matter." I figured she probably wanted to marry Alexander Wang. My fingers tightened. "It doesn't matter." Grace lowered her eyes and said softly, "Evie, I understand." A few days later, it was Alexander Wang's birthday. Back then, his mother had outshone all the consorts. She'd been deeply favored, which bred envy. The day she gave birth, she was secretly harmed. If my father's corruption case hadn't implicated so many later on, and if palace servants hadn't confessed all sorts of things under interrogation, things unrelated to the case, his mother's death would still be a mystery. That was why every year on his birthday, I never dared provoke him. But for days on end, Alexander Wang seemed to vanish from the world. At last, today, I found out where he was. I cooked a bowl of noodles and carried it to his room myself. My knocking echoed in the night. Inside, there was no sound. I refused to give up and kept knocking. Alexander Wang opened the door. Still nothing. In a panic, I shoved the door. At that exact moment, it was pulled open from inside. I stumbled forward. The bowl of longevity noodles tipped, about to spill all over Alexander Wang. He wrapped a long arm around my waist, steadying me. With his other hand, he caught the tray. In the deep night, I looked up and met his eyes in the moonlight. His gaze was heavy, like ink that wouldn't dissolve. Thinking of how awkward things had been last time, I rubbed my nose. "What are you hiding in here for? I called forever, and you didn't open." The hand on my waist tightened. He squeezed hard enough that I cried out and went stiff. In the unseen darkness, heat crawled up my neck. "Why are you here?" he asked. "To celebrate your birthday." Alexander Wang fell silent. I thought he was angry. I stole a glance at him. He turned away and lit a lamp. His expression was calm. In a flat voice, he said, "What's there to see? Go to bed early." I could hear it. He was in a foul mood, but there was less menace than before, and more casualness. He did treat me differently now. I swallowed and looked at the noodles. They were cooked to mush. My nerves jumped. While I was still distracted, Alexander Wang had already plunged his chopsticks into the noodles, stirred and frowned hard. Broken up like that. Not a good omen. Yet he pulled the bowl closer, lowered his head, and shoved a chopstick full of mush into his mouth. I winced, watching him chew slowly with a pained expression on my own face. I wanted to ask if it tasted good, but I couldn't bring myself to. Forget it. It couldn't possibly be good. The candle flame flickered. Shadows shifted. Alexander Wang kept his head down, focused on eating. For a full tea's time, he didn't say a word to me. When the night watchman's loud call rang out, the bowl was empty. I snapped back. A thin sheen of sweat had formed on Alexander Wang's nose. The way he looked at me was dark and bright, and it reminded me of Laifu, the dog we kept back at the estate. My heart tightened, and the words spilled out. Alexander Wang, peace and safety year after year. 4 years from now, I'll celebrate with you again. His birthday came once every 4 years. In my last life, he'd never truly celebrated it. I'd only ever said something like that once. Alexander Wang snorted a laugh and lowered his eyes. His long forefinger rested lightly on his eyelid. He pressed his lips together, then opened his eyes again. Who says I only celebrate once every 4 years? From now on, I'm celebrating every year. And if you keep cooking like this, I'll sell you off. Fine. It's your birthday. You decide. I smoothed my skirt and started to rise, but Alexander Wang suddenly grabbed my wrist and yanked me down onto his lap. Where are you going? I jolted. But back to sleep. I felt it. My whole body seemed to catch fire, my blood turning scalding hot. Alexander Wang's throat bobbed, his gaze darkened. Alexander Wang, have some shame. How can you do that to me? Do what to you? His dark eyes locked onto me. He pressed a hand to my shoulder and forced me down. What's wrong with me? I lost all balance. Flustered, ears burning, I blurted, I was at least once your. He gave a scornful laugh and leaned closer. You were my stepmother for how many days? You never even climbed into the dragon bed, and you want to lord it over me? Evelyn Zheng, keep dreaming. His words shattered my thoughts. I murmured, all right then, Alexander Wang. So you finally stopped pretending. After that drunken night, we'd been left half undressed in an awkward mess. Of course, he hadn't explained anything. Alexander Wang pinched my lips between his fingers and stayed silent for a long time. I thought I must be seeing things. His eyes were a little red, his gaze frighteningly bright. The rainy night was cold. Before long, rain poured down in sheets, soaking even the window paper. He still carried the clean scent of soap beans from bathing. Holding my hand, he said, You're not going back tonight. I swallowed hard. I think you like me. Alexander Wang let out a cold snort. You're really smart. But don't you like Grace? Like my ass. My face fell. Then I'm done for. I promised you to Grace. Bang! A door slammed shut right in front of me. Alexander Wang stood inside, roaring, Evelyn Zheng, sleep wherever you want. If I ever like you again, I'm a dog. I'm cold, I said, tipping my chin up, staring at his shadow in the room. Nothing moved for a long time. I sighed and was about to leave. The door suddenly flew open. An arm shot out and yanked me inside. He looked slim and tall, but his forearm was surprisingly strong, smooth lines, solid muscle, hard against me. Warmth wrapped around me at once. I gasped. Gently, it hurts. He moved like a stone statue, heavy-handed. I guessed my lower back was already bruising from his grip. Alexander Wang loosened his hold a little and buried his head in the hollow of my neck. You were really leaving. My heart softened. I whispered, I wasn't. I felt dampness and, without thinking, touched his head. You're fine. Why would you do something so stupid? I meant him being reborn. Enough questions, he said dully. I tilted my head. Don't tell me you died for me. After a long while, he said, resentful, You really think you're something? Me, dying for you. I must have been blind. But there was no bite to it. That night, Alexander Wang held me carefully. His arms were warm. I slept unusually well, so well I didn't even want to wake when morning came. When I finally did, the room was empty. Hot food sat on the table. Chloe came in and looked me over cautiously, a flicker of excitement flashing in her eyes. Where's the prince? I sat at the mirror, lost in thought. The prince went to court early this morning, Chloe answered honestly. A hairpin clinked onto the vanity. I stared blankly at my empty hand. Who went to court? The prince. Had the sun risen in the west? Alexander Wang, that spoiled delinquent, had been a menace for over a decade. Overnight, he'd changed from the inside out. He could actually go to court? Did he even have a place there? Chloe's eyes darted. Ma'am, I heard it's because of you. I studied my reflection with satisfaction. Peerless beauty, cool and untouched by dust. I teased open the tight bud at my temple. What could I possibly have done? My heart jolted. Alexander Wang wouldn't have lost his mind and tried to make me his princess consort, would he? I was the daughter of a criminal, still under suspicion. He'd gain nothing and invite trouble. Chloe shook her head, waving her hands anxiously as she lowered her voice. I heard it's because Ruren's envoy has come to ask their Khan to marry a princess. If I remembered correctly, that northern state, Ruren, had stirred up trouble not long ago. They'd seized a few cities from northern Wei. It never turned into open war. Now that spring had come, their envoys traveled 1,000 miles, shamelessly showing up at our doorstep. In my last life, I was busy being invested as Empress. The Emperor sent Grace Jing for the political marriage. Alexander Wang received the order to escort her. The moment the edict was issued, he raised troops in rebellion. My fingers tightened around the hairpin. Do you know who they're sending? Chloe dropped her voice even further. It was supposed to be Princess Grace Jing, but last night, it changed. They switched it to you. I froze. Something strange flickered through my chest. By noon, the weather had warmed. Wrapped in a cloak with my hands tucked inside, I sat in the courtyard in the sun, waiting for Alexander Wang to return. This year had brought an unusual amount of rain. Before long, hoofbeats sounded outside. A horse whinnied. Hooves struck the ground. It was Alexander Wang's Saifeng steed. I looked toward the gate. Alexander Wang strode in, full of energy. He didn't look like someone who'd just been humiliated. He spotted me from a distance and curled his lips. You're sitting out here freezing. Why aren't you inside? What was with that sudden familiarity? Like I was some little wife waiting for her man to come home. And he was the husband working hard to provide. I brushed the gritty snow off my backside and stood. I heard Northern Wei is sending me off for a political marriage. Alexander Wang casually undid the clasps of his cloak. Out of nowhere, he said, Grace can't go anymore. When I stared at him, he added, last night Grace was named Empress and took the central palace. The plot of 2 lifetimes had flipped completely. I stood there, stunned. Choosing an Empress so hastily was far too rushed. The wrongness in my chest deepened. Something wasn't right. Alexander Wang washed his hands. Grace has been in my father's bed for a long time. Last night, the imperial physician checked her pulse. She's 2 months pregnant. Prince Jingnan stormed the palace overnight, demanding an explanation. The royal family couldn't refuse. I hadn't expected Grace to call him Uncle Emperor and still never treat him like a real uncle. 2 months ago, thinking of all the days I'd exhausted myself for her, nausea rose in my throat. The Emperor had always intended to make Grace Empress. Then my becoming Empress in my last life was unsettling. Alexander Wang fumbled with the clasp, head lowered. Help me undo it. I can't. Distracted, I did. Alexander Wang said, relax, I haven't agreed yet. Who would dare send you away? I stared at him blankly. Alexander Wang smiled. Look at you, panicking over nothing. You still need me to cover for you. I asked, then, who are they sending? Me. The room went silent. The candle gave a sharp crackle. I couldn't tell if my ears were failing or if Alexander Wang had lost his mind. He caught my horrified look. With a rip, he tore off the annoying cloak, hauled me into his arms, and rolled with me onto the heated couch. One leg braced at the edge, blocking my escape. Evelyn Zheng, I'll go myself and cut off that old Ruren bastard's head. You can kick it around like a ball. What kind of madness did I ever have to kick a head around like a ball? But seeing the edge in Alexander Wang's expression, I finally understood. The Emperor planned to send him north with an army. This time it would be under the name of a political marriage, but meant for something much bigger. I swallowed. I want to stay in the capital city. Like hell. Alexander Wang cut me off without mercy. If you don't at least put on an act, what, do you want me to wear your bridal veil and go in your place? Fine. I knew better than to push my luck. I shut up. That afternoon, Grace came. I sat under the veranda pillars and made her wait a little. Her makeup was heavy. The usual arrogance was gone, and she looked oddly subdued. Evie, I begged for a safety talisman for you. Take it with you. The words take it with you hit like a blade. I didn't move. I didn't reach out. Grace's expression faltered. She crouched and looked up at me. Evie, I had to plan for myself, but I didn't expect it would be you. Didn't you? I asked. Grace raised her hand and swore to the heavens. Evie, I only wanted to be Empress, for my family's honor, for my parents. I can't go to Ruren. I absolutely can't. From the beginning, you wanted to be Empress? I lowered my eyes and asked softly. Grace answered without hesitation. Yes. I suddenly laughed. Gently, I pushed her hand away. If I were only 20, I'd believe you. Grace looked confused. I brushed past her and stood, closing my eyes for a moment. Before I was formally invested in my last life, I lived in the palace of earthly tranquility. The only person I saw was Grace. She told me I would be Empress, and she would be sent for a political marriage. What if it had been a lie from the very start? What if, from the very beginning, I was the one meant to be sent away? Grace had woven a dream with her own hands just to make me take her place. Then she was truly terrifying. Grace still crouched on the ground. Through her thick lashes she watched me, calm, unreadable. I smiled. Grace, if you'd told me the truth back then, I would have agreed. When spring arrived, the willows in the capital city budded green. I was granted the title Princess Pingshuo. With the title of princess on my head came a single fate. I had to marry out of the palace. A group of old nannies saw how young I was and how I was being made to shoulder a political marriage. They couldn't bear it. They poured all their effort into painting my face bright and beautiful. They said that no matter how vile that old ruined beast was, he'd still know to cherish a pretty woman. Better to look prettier. It couldn't hurt. Once we left the capital city, the wind turned fierce, snapping the curtain like a whip. Willow fluff swept in all at once. I lifted my veil and coughed so hard I nearly blacked out. God knew this was the worst time of year for me. Alexander Wang, acting as the escort general, was already waiting outside the city. The moment the carriage stopped, a tall figure strode up from outside. Whoosh, the curtain flew up. Evelyn Zheng, stop sitting in there. Get down and ride a horse. His words stuck in his throat. I covered my mouth, tears spilling over. In his eyes I caught a flash of stunned admiration. Thud. The water pouch in Alexander Wang's hand dropped onto the carriage floor. Whoosh. He yanked the curtain shut. His shadow stood outside, motionless. I coughed until I couldn't breathe. Prince, Evie wants some water. Don't you have hands? Isn't it on the floor? Alexander Wang's voice was stiff. I coughed again and again. Staggering upright, I reached for the pouch. The curtain was pulled open again. Alexander Wang darted in like a monkey. He scooped me up and turned his back to block the curious stares outside. My face burned. Sweat beaded on my forehead. Weak, I sagged into his arms. I heard him curse as he yanked out the stopper and poured water into my mouth. Under his breath, he muttered, "Why'd they paint you this pretty?" Trying to steal souls. I didn't know about anyone else. But Alexander Wang's soul was nearly stolen. As I drank, his gaze went blank 3 times. He licked his lips 3 times. His Adam's apple bobbed 3 times. The hand at my waist was hot as fire. Can't even drink properly, he growled. He lifted the pouch and took a mouthful himself. Then he pinched my chin, forced my lips open, and leaned in, water and all. My eyes flew wide. His breath scorched. Where our lips met, it was like fire. My breathing turned ragged. A secret thrill unfurled in my chest, and a jolt ran up my spine to the crown of my head. I whimpered, eyes stinging with tears, and shot him a look. Brute, Alexander Wang grinned, flashing white teeth. You dare look down on me? I nuzzled under his throat and coaxed. How would I dare? His dark eyes dropped to my face. He studied me closely, then pressed his thumb to my lips and rubbed hard. Why are they painted so red? Don't wear it. No lipstick. And don't you dare wear that wedding dress either. What was wrong with him now? My lips were already swollen from his biting. After that rough handling, of course they were red. I couldn't stop him. Flustered, I took his index finger into my mouth and gave it a light lick. Alexander Wang's whole body jerked as if struck by lightning. He froze, unable to move. Outside the curtain, his subordinate kindly reminded him, Prince Yu, it's time to set off. Don't miss the auspicious hour. Alexander Wang set me on the cushioned stool, shot me a warning glare, and jumped down from the carriage. We traveled from south to north. The weather turned colder. Layer by layer, I added clothes. In the end, I simply put on a padded jacket. Now we had reached Eastford. 50 more lie north, we'd reach the border between Northern Wei and Ruran. That was where Alexander Wang and I would part ways, each with our own task. Within Ruran stood a mountain called Twin Ridge Mountain. Easy to defend, hard to take. But once it fell, there would be open plains 30 li to the north. Then nothing could stop Northern Wei's general from pointing his sword at the royal court. As the political marriage princess, I had to detour around the western foothills of Twin Ridge Mountain. Compared to cutting through the mountain, it would delay my arrival at the royal court by a full half-month. Half a month later, I would reach the royal court, marry their Ruran king, and consummate the marriage. So Alexander Wang's deadline to take Twin Ridge Mountain was only half a month. Of course, if he didn't care whether I lived or died, he could drag it out. Half a year, even. He could afford it. 40,000 elite troops camped beneath Twin Ridge Mountain. Behind them lay Northern Y's vast lands. Even a ruin fly would be dreaming if it tried to slip through. Achoo. In the carriage, wrapped in 3 layers, I still sneezed. As dusk fell, we stopped at a post station in Eastford. Not long ago, freezing rain had fallen here. The ground was slick. Alexander Wang jumped off his horse and came to get me. I struggled in protest a few times, but he still carried me into the station. The station had never hosted figures of such rank. Hearing we were a political marriage party from the capital city, they scrambled to set out food, then retreated in a panic. Alexander Wang and I were assigned separate rooms. He refused to stay in his. He came to mine instead. He didn't speak, just lit a lamp and studied a military map in the dim light. I leaned over and saw messy markings and notes all over it. I swallowed a sip of hot tea and stayed quiet. But I had my worries. People said you had to look out for yourself, or heaven would strike you down. Whether I could walk out of the Ruan royal court alive depended entirely on Alexander Wang. Yet he still hadn't made his stance clear. The only time he'd spoken from the heart, he'd said he'd cut off the old Ruan king's head and give it to me as a ball to kick. In the hush of night, I saw he had no intention of resting. I took off my padded jacket, slid into his arms, and said softly, "Prince, Evie is sleepy." As I spoke, my fingers slipped inside his collar. Alexander Wang kept his eyes on the map and pressed down my roaming hand. "If you're sleepy, why are you tormenting me? Go sleep in bed." I bit my lip and whispered, "I won't. I can't sleep without you." His hand trembled. Those pitch-black eyes locked on mine. His voice went rough. "Say that again." I hooked a finger under his belt and tugged. His robe came loose. Heat rushed over me. I leaned in, unhurried. "Prince, sleep with Evie." Bang! He slammed the map onto the table. His focus shifted completely from tactics to me. He pulled me onto his lap. His right hand cupped the back of my neck, and he kissed me without warning. I jolted and pushed at him on instinct. I didn't use much force, it was more like playing coy. Before I could adjust to his fierce assault, Alexander Wang suddenly lifted me in his arms, pinned me, and dropped with me onto the soft bed. "Evelyn Zheng, even if the heavens come down, you're the one who seduced me first today." He said it with vicious force, yet there was a trace of grievance in it. I mumbled something and couldn't help laughing. After holding back this long, I finally understood one thing. Alexander Wang was fiercely protective. Once you were his, it only brought benefit, never harm. He wasn't exactly rough, but he was never gentle either. It was like he was holding a priceless treasure and didn't know how to cherish it. At first, his movements were clumsy. I couldn't help myself. I mocked him once. That seemed to stab him right in the lungs. He didn't let go of me all night. In bed, he kept threatening me. "Laugh again and see what happens." I meant to tease him. I grinned. Gradually, I couldn't smile anymore. Then my eyes filled with tears. My hands clutched his arms in vain as I begged again and again. Alexander Wang was like a man gone mad. His stamina was terrifying. Men and women weren't equal in strength. Later, I had no strength left to resist at all. When he bullied me too hard, I put on a show and cried a couple of times. Alexander Wang's face flushed red as he held himself back. He pressed his forehead to mine, teeth clenched. "If I'd known you'd be this tormenting, I never should have met you. Evelyn Zheng, why did you run your mouth back then and curse me?" Even at a time like this, he could dredge up old scores. I bit my lip, tears streaming. Evie knows she was wrong. Am I a freak? No. Do you regret it? I regret it. Apologize. I'm sorry. When Alexander Wang was out of his mind with desire, he hugged me tight and blurted, "Evelyn Zheng, don't die." There was dampness at my neck. Only then did I realize Alexander Wang seemed to be crying. By the time I sat in the carriage, my legs weak, it was already noon. The marriage convoy hurried on toward Ruan. Alexander Wang was no longer quiet like he'd been at first. Whenever he had the chance, he'd climb into my carriage, grab me, and kiss me messily. His hands were never well behaved. "Does it hurt? Let me check." Mortified, I slapped his hand away, cheeks blazing. No matter what, I was a proper noblewoman. Doing that in broad daylight was something I wouldn't have dared to imagine. Beneath Twin Ridge Mountain, the troops split into 2 routes. Alexander Wang held my finger, rubbing it back and forth. His handsome face was set like stone. In 3 days, I'll take Twin Ridge Mountain for you. I knew it was just angry talk. I leaned in and kissed him. Prince, the 3rd day of the 4th month is Evie's birthday. You have to hurry. I didn't know why I told him my birthday. Afraid he'd say something even more outrageous, I hurriedly added, "Can I not have the old Ruren King's head?" Alexander Wang suddenly smiled, bright as spring sunlight. "This time I'll give you something special." His smile was beautiful. I stared, entranced, as his lips moved. "I'll take Ruren and give it to you." Fine. I shouldn't have expected anything else. When Alexander Wang was about to leave, I stood on the carriage step. My eyes stung. This time, it truly felt like sending a man off to war. His long figure sat tall on horseback. He tightened the reins of his swift steed. In the cold wind, the horse let out a clear, high neigh, brimming with fighting spirit. It seemed a young man was meant to be like this, like the rising sun, blazing bright, full of endless promise. He stood proudly in the morning light, his whole body gilded. "Listen well. In that carriage is my little son. If any of you let anything happen to her, you won't live to see tomorrow's sun." Alexander Wang took only a small portion of the men. The main party entered Ruin territory and marched toward the capital. The cold grew sharper. At night, it cut to the bone. The fox fur cloak I wore had been custom-made by Alexander Wang, with 2 extra layers of fur. Wrapped in it, I stayed warm. Even so, the name Alexander Wang was stamped into my mind. It kept leaping up from memory, his shameless face, his devoted face, the way he held me and called me Evelyn Zheng. I grew quieter and quieter. Even Chloe noticed. "My lady, the northern frontier wind is strong and the frost is heavy. We'll be delayed on the road for a long time. You must take care of yourself." I coughed twice and lay on my side against the soft cushions. Suddenly I thought Alexander Wang's idea wasn't bad at all. Cutting off that old Ruin King's head and using it as a ball to kick. At his age, he still had the nerve to ruin Northern Wei girls. Dark clouds rolled in, pressing down with menace. The wind strengthened and the convoy could barely move. Dizzy, I held my head and sat up. Suddenly the carriage jolted. A soldier shouted urgently, "Assassins! Protect the princess?" I knew it wouldn't go smoothly. I didn't hear the clash of weapons I expected. Instead, a man's wild voice rang out. "Hand over the princess. I'll spare your lives." His Chinese was clumsy, but the excitement in his tone was unmistakable. Chloe panicked. "My lady, this... in the middle of nowhere, where would bandits come from?" I narrowed my eyes. "Who is it?" After a long pause, a commander beside us answered in a low voice. "Princess, it's Ruran's second prince, Victor." I'd heard of him long ago. My father, a scheming, ruthless minister, had spent years obsessed with digging through the genealogies of neighboring states. Victor was the child the old Ruran king had sired after drunkenly taking a servant woman. He'd never been favored, not since childhood. In recent years, the Ruran royal court had been tearing itself apart. Victor was likely desperate. He thought that if he seized me, he could win Northern Wei's support. He didn't realize that once Twin Ridge Mountain fell, both he and his father would end up behind bars. I rested my fingers lightly on my knee, tapping slowly. Then I said calmly, "Second Prince, thank you for coming in person to welcome me. I'm deeply grateful. For the rest of the journey, I'll trouble you." Chloe stared at me like I'd gone mad. "He's not welcoming you. He's kidnapping you." Head lowered, I smiled. If he can out-kidnap Alexander Wang, then he's got real skill. The fool basked in the joy of victory. With barely any effort, he had married the princess and brought her back to his lair. The convoy changed course, turned east and entered Victor's fief. Victor had brown hair and green eyes, a broad forehead, a wide nose bridge, and a huge build. The first time he saw me, he threw back his head and laughed. "I've long heard of the princess's beauty. Seeing you today, the rumors were true." "Heard it from where?" "My father-in-law." "Me?" Only when I saw my father in Victor's stronghold did I understand. He looked even more energetic than when I left the capital city, radiant, you might say. He'd put on a full ring of weight, even a double chin. When my father saw me, his lips trembled. "My girl, I've missed you so much." My father was known as Northern Wei's greatest talent, elegant and charming. I never imagined he could turn into this. Because of it, I ignored him for days. In my past life, I missed him so much, I clawed my way to the position of Empress. In the end, rebels forced me to hang myself. And all that time, my father had been living comfortably in ruin. My girl, I heard you married the third prince. Is he treating you well? My girl, Victor is good too. He's been waiting for you for days. Why don't you consider it? I covered my flat belly and counted the days. Alexander Wang had been separated from me for 5 days. He'd said he'd take Twin Ridge Mountain in 3. Where was he? My girl? My father-in-law, I've obtained a jade coral tree today. Round pearls, smooth jade, it suits the princess best. Victor wore a lake blue deerskin robe. His green eyes fixed on me without blinking, his smile tender. Uncomfortable, I frowned and lowered my gaze. Don't waste it on me. Give it to my father. My father gave an awkward laugh and touched his neck, murmuring, I didn't gain that much. Victor went on. The weather is fine today. I'll take the princess out for a stroll. Let you enjoy the beauty of Reborn. He didn't ask. He reached out to grab me. My father coughed lightly and stepped in front of me, smiling. Your Highness, I've never seen it myself. Why don't we go together? Victor's gaze clearly didn't want him tagging along, but my father had spent years in office, slick, thick-skinned, and skilled at playing both sides. He wedged himself between Victor and me, acting utterly oblivious. I found my father far more likable at once. Princess, look, this is our Reborn River. It freezes in winter. Carriages and horses can cross it. Oh, if Alexander Wang dares come, I'll make sure he never returns, idiot. When the time comes, I'll enter the Central Plains, make you Empress, and share a golden age with you. A lovely dream. Victor looked arrogant, staring at me with a sickly sweet gaze. What does the princess think? I lifted a gentle smile. Everything you say is absolutely right. Reborn was cold to begin with. My hands and feet were stiff with it. I had no mood to chatter with him. The sun hung overhead behind a thin veil of fog. I frowned. With heavy snow sealing the mountain, could Alexander Wang take it? Soon, news came from Twin Ridge Mountain. Victor's face darkened. He barged into my room at night, seized my wrist, and dragged me outside. My father stood in the courtyard and roared, "Let her go." Victor's eyes were bloodshot. Strategist, stay out of this. She's Alexander Wang's woman. I don't believe he won't care. She's also my daughter, my father bellowed, voice booming. If you want to win this war, be smart. In my heart, my father had always been the smartest man alive. In 1 year, he'd coaxed Victor into obeying him. Now, the moment my father spoke, Victor hesitated. Strategist, I won't hurt her, but she has to be this hostage. I knew it. Alexander Wang had reached Twin Ridge Mountain. That night, I sat on Victor's horse. The cold wind cut my face like blades. We raced all the way to the foot of Twin Ridge Mountain. The mountains, once white with snow, were now lit by beacon fires. The slopes rang with killing cries. Smoke rose everywhere. Firelight stained the dusk like blood. Victor cursed under his breath and halted 2 li away, waiting in silence. In the heavy twilight, a tall figure rode in from the base of the mountain. He carried a long spear and wore iron armor. I couldn't see his face. Behind him, a black mass of troops stood in formation. Northern Wei had taken Twin Ridge Mountain. Reborn was already within their grasp. Don't touch her. Alexander Wang's voice was hoarse, thick with killing intent. Yet beneath the icy words, I heard tenderness. He was telling me not to be afraid. Victor's breathing turned ragged. When he spoke, excitement hid inside it. Alexander Wang, I didn't think you'd make it here. Everyone's here, right? The battle had just ended. When Northern Wei's soldiers were most relaxed, my heart lurched, my face changed. Alexander Wang, retreat, a trap. No wonder taking Twin Ridge Mountain had been so smooth. It had to be my father's plan. I hated him so much my teeth clenched. I shouted at my father, I already slept with him. Why are you trying to kill him? My father's face went blank for a moment. He muttered, I didn't do anything. In the dead silence, Alexander Wang let out a soft laugh, full of contempt. You filthy dog, 3,000 troops, and you think you can trap me? Did your mother forget to give birth to your brain? Victor refused to back down. You have 40,000, I have 30,000. I don't believe you took the mountain without losses. Now we're evenly matched. I've surrounded you. You can't fly out even with wings. Alexander Wang tossed his long spear to the ground with a clang. He spread an arm and called out, Bring me a bow. Overestimating yourself. Victor yanked the reins and pressed a dagger to me. If you don't want this woman, I'll solve that for you. A line of light rose in the east. Dawn broke. The 40,000 troops hidden in the ravines revealed their true form. At the foot of the mountain, scarecrows stood jammed together. Crooked, scattered. Only in the weak morning light could you see what they really were. In the fierce wind, Alexander Wang stood alone on horseback. He drew the bow like a full moon. 3 arrows aimed straight at Victor. Farther out, ruined soldiers lay strewn across the ground. Blood ran like a river. Northern Way's 40,000 lions planted their battle flags into crimson earth. The mantis stalked the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. Ruran had lost. Victor screamed, "Impossible." Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The arrows tore through the air and drove clean into Victor's skull. Hot blood sprayed the back of my neck. I shuddered, lost my balance, and toppled in a daze toward the ground. "My girl, Dad's here to catch you," my father cried. At the critical moment, my father lunged forward and threw himself beneath me, cushioning my fall. He yelped and complained loudly, "My girl, why are you heavier now?" Before I could react, I fell into a warm embrace. Alexander Wang crushed me to his chest, breathing ragged. "Evelyn Zheng, I'm here to take you home." My tears burst out at once. A moment ago, I'd felt nothing. Now, smelling the blood on him, I understood how brutal this battle had been. His armor was hacked to pieces. A huge gash split his back, still seeping blood from the strain of drawing the bow. His other hand was split open too, deep enough to see bone. He was a wreck, like a stray dog driven from home. I sobbed until I couldn't breathe. Alexander Wang wiped my face clumsily. "Evie, don't cry. I'll blow on it. Where are you hurt?" Then suddenly, memories that weren't mine surged into my mind. The scene shifted. On the day I died, I wore a bright red wedding dress. A white silk noose hung from the beam. Outside the window, killing cries shook the sky. Alexander Wang knelt beside me, dazed. Behind him, the reigning emperor was furious. "Rebellious son. For her you rebel? You dare rebel for her." Alexander Wang's eyes were bloodshot. His voice sounded distant, yet painfully real. "You can have her marry anyone, but she can't marry him. Let Grace go. Didn't we agree Grace would go?" By the end, sorrow seeped into his voice. "Grace ran away," the emperor snapped, hands clasped behind his back, furious at his failure. "I barely tricked her into putting on the wedding dress and marrying into Rurun. She's only a piece on the board, do you understand?" Blood tears ran from Alexander Wang's eyes. He wiped my face and murmured, "She wants to be Empress. Can't you let her be Empress? She's the daughter of a criminal minister. Are you dreaming?" The emperor's face darkened. "Alexander Wang, you can't blame anyone else. Ruran forced her to death. If you have the skill, go take Ruran for me." The scene shifted again. It was still beneath Twin Ridge Mountain, but now the 40,000 troops in the ravines were real. Alexander Wang, drawing the bow, was real. My father, crazed, was real too. "Alexander Wang, I'll make you pay with your life for her." The ambushing Ruran troops surged in from every direction. Weapons clashed, killing cries shook the sky. Everyone fought until their eyes were red. Alexander Wang's figure became a tiny dot in the bloody haze, so small. I watched his arrows run out. He snatched up his long spear and fought on. He was like a tireless madman. With his spear, he severed countless heads. Corpses quickly piled into a hill at his feet, but ahead was a sea of people. With one spear, how could he win? His armor shattered. His chest was riddled through. Soldiers behind him fell one after another. Alexander Wang braced himself on his spear, head bowed, blades buried all over his body. Blood poured from him, forming a small river. This time he didn't win, yet he refused to fall. When the sun rose, his lips moved. He had no strength left, but I still heard him. "Evie, wait for me." Spring birdsong startled me awake. Outside the window, young girls whispered, "She's been asleep for a month, still not waking." Could it be? "Shh, don't say that. If the prince hears you, he'll skin you alive." I lifted a hand and wiped my face. It was wet, slick with tears. I said nothing. I lay there alone for a long time. Then someone pushed the door open. My eyes drifted over and met a pair of eyes shot through with red veins. Clang! A bowl slipped from someone's hands and shattered on the floor. Alexander Wang turned and bolted out. "Where's the doctor? Now!" A quarter hour later, the doctor rushed in and sighed. "Prince Yu, you're holding her too tightly. I can't take her pulse." Alexander Wang reluctantly loosened his arms, baring a bit of my skin. The old doctor stroked his beard and squinted. "Huh? What is it?" Alexander Wang demanded, taut with tension. The old doctor pinched my wrist and felt carefully. It feels like pregnancy, but also not. Alexander Wang flushed with anger on the spot. Are you competent or not? If not, I'll hire someone else. In the end, Alexander Wang summoned every doctor in the city. Each one examined me. I was indeed pregnant. Alexander Wang was so happy he looked like an idiot. He carried me back and forth. Evie, look, the baby's so small. I'm holding you and you don't even feel heavy. Nothing could be more foolish than that. Whenever I had time, I would stare at him, lost in thought. Tell me, I asked, what do you even like about me? Alexander Wang nuzzled against me. Everything. As he spoke, he compared fabric patterns. What do you think? Green for a boy? I picked at my nails and cut him off. Pick a day and marry me. Alexander Wang held me close. We'll have to wait until father-in-law returns to the capital city to take up his post. I think we should stay in the northern frontier for a while. When it gets cooler, we'll head back to the capital city. By then, the baby will be born too, and you won't have to worry about the bumps on the road. Because my father had infiltrated Ruran, he'd earned great merit. He'd already left the northern frontier days ago to return to the capital city and take up office. We both understood the conspiracy from my past life. Alexander Wang had once asked me if I wanted to be Empress, if I wanted revenge. If I nodded, he would cut off Grace's head and his father's head and bring them to me. I refused without a second thought. Alexander Wang had suffered enough in that life. He was flesh and blood. It was better for him to live in peace. Our return to the capital city was delayed again and again. By October, my father had become chancellor once more, powerful enough to sway the court. An imperial decree arrived from the capital city. Alexander Wang was granted the title Prince Zhenbai, and I became the princess consort of Prince Zhenbai. On New Year's Day the following year, I gave birth to a pair of children. We named them Adrian Wang and Nora Wang. Alexander Wang said we might as well never go back. He had conquered Ruran, so naturally he should guard it forever. I knew he was afraid of me drawing close to that place. Even more afraid that one day he would wake up and everything would begin again. Thankfully, more than 10 years passed. We grew old together, our hair turned white, our descendants filling the house. All was peaceful.